Hello viewer, welcome to the show, The Bible Journey. Once again, we are back live to continue the discussion on the Word of God, the Bible. And we want to welcome you in a very special way that you may join us as we continue this analysis to understand the message of God in the particular chapter that we'll be discussing today. And of course, in studio, I'm joined by a very special panelist of pastor and elders. That is Pastor Kabira wa Kabira. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you.
And next to him is my brother, Elder George Reru. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And then we have in the middle, Elder Sam Obara from UON. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir.
And next to me here is my brother, Harry Kiche. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and of course, today we are discussing about the book of Genesis, and the chapter is 10. Remember that also your comments are welcome, your questions, whatever you think about the chapter and what you want to ask, you can ask on our social media platforms. To start with Facebook, our Facebook page is Hope Channel Kenya. Like the page and give us your comment, ask your question there. On Twitter, our Twitter handle is @Hope_Kenya. Of course, you can get me on my personal Twitter handle @NickRatemo. Now, welcome my panelists to this discussion, and I really appreciate for your coming. Now, going to the book of Genesis, we've been studying a lot of things. We've been seeing a lot of things coming out very clearly. God is communicating to us, and we've now from Genesis chapter 6, we saw a transition that came in, and then we come to this man Noah. And then the flood came, the flood is past, we are past the flood, now the post-Diluvian world. And now going to Genesis chapter 10, something comes up, and we are being given the genealogy of Noah. And first of all, if you remember, Pastor, right well, when we were talking about Genesis chapter 9, we had the order being given there of the sons of Noah. And he mentioned the sons of Noah were in chapter 9. I think he gave us the genealogy in terms of their blessings, not really their births. Then when you come to chapter 10, the order changes, because I understand that Japheth is supposed to be the firstborn in terms of births. Then we have Ham as the secondborn, and Shem the lastborn. Or is it not so? Then when you come now to Genesis chapter 10, he says that these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. So now in this, here we have another order also being given. And maybe you would want to explain to us, why is there a shift in this order of births?
Thank you. We have to first understand the background of the book of Genesis. I said it earlier in another program that Moses is writing to the Israelites.
Sure.
He's letting them know. He's letting them know what happened up to where they are. Remember, this is in the wilderness, and so he's leaving them something that once they get to Canaan, they will be able to use for their references.
Sure.
So he gives a background. And so the reason as to why he begins with Shem, it's because he is the father of the rest of the Hebrews. So it's very easy for him to identify by saying, these are the sons of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, because that is the order. In terms of, can I say importance? Can I say in terms of relevance?
Yeah, what relates to them.
Yes, what relates to them. He says, your father is Shem, who had a brother called Ham, and Japheth. For purposes of, emphasis. Can I say it's for emphasis?
Sure.
But then when he comes to give genealogy now, of course, the same chapter 10, he says, now this is the genealogy of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But when now he begins from verse 2, he begins, the sons of Japheth were, the sons, verse 6, the sons of Ham were, and then verse 21, the sons of Shem. That is now the order that should be there. However, there was the order of relevance, which begins with Shem, and then Ham and Japheth. Yeah. Shem because he was the father, Ham because he was the, like we can say, the type versus antitype, that what they are comparing themselves to. You know, where they were. Yeah. Remember, they were in, where were they? They were in bondage where? In Egypt. The father of the Egyptians was Ham. So he's comparing with them that your father is Shem, and then you are with Ham's, I mean the Ham's family, but then there is the other one. Of course, we'll just say the other one in terms of, from even how he describes him, Japheth. He's not into play so much.
Yeah, we always seen a play between Shem and Ham.
Yes.
And I think a lot of emphasis has been laid on these two, and on opposite sides, because actually they are in bondage in the house of Ham.
Yes.
And I don't know what my panelists here have learned so far up to chapter 9 of the book of Genesis, especially when it comes to these two sons of Noah, Ham and Shem.
Maybe to say something, if we go back to Genesis chapter 9, and we start from verse 22.
Genesis 9:22.
Yes, my Bible says that, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and he told his two brothers outside. This is Noah, the father of these three sons.
Yes.
And Ham, he has gone further to see the nakedness of his father. Now, see the result of this action. If you look at verses 25, it says that he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be to his brothers." He also said, now the result of him seeing the nakedness of his father is that he received curse from his father Noah. Now, from the genealogy of Ham, it came out, like I can say, a cursed generation. And if you look at verses 26, he said, he also said, "Blessed be the Lord of Shem, and let Canaan do what? Be his servant." So the controversy comes out very clearly, such in the case that Ham is placed under the care of Shem, that he will serve Shem in his lifetime. That is what Moses is trying to tell us.
I actually, when we were studying about that chapter 9, we saw this coming out very clearly, that the two, one is blessed and one is cursed and remains to be a servant of the other. And now when we were going into the ark, before the flood, we had only 3 sons and their wives, 3 of them, and the parents, father and mother. So a total of 8 people go into the ark. At the end of it, a total of 8 people, plus of course the animals and other living creatures that have been saved, they come out of the ark. Now after that, I guess that's the reason why he starts on verse 1 and says that now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. So it's only after the flood that sons are being born unto thee. So the family starts extending. And I think, like, of course you cautioned about calling Noah another Adam, because in the New Testament we have another Adam who is Jesus Christ. But here we still have something like a re-beginning again, like we said last time, where now regeneration. They are starting to populate the world once again. Maybe you have something to...
Perhaps I can use an analogy to explain something that has been very prevalent, a baseball game, perhaps. You as given the bat and the ball is thrown to you, you're supposed to hit it.
Yeah.
So the very first time the human race was given the bat and the ball was thrown to them, I'm referring to our early parents, and they missed. Now you find that the second time they missed by falling. Now the second time we find that sin is still prevalent. Now there was strike 2. That was strike 1, the missing by our early parents. Now strike 2 is when we find that Ham is still accursed, in that he did an evil thing. But then there's a strike 2 in that they missed hitting the ball. That's why now Christ had to, rather, a seed had to be sent in the form of Abraham. A seed had to be planted, and now the Abraham's case was now strike 3, which, well, we are still part of it, but as things go by, really, we might
there was
miss
another strike somewhere.
Yes.
Wow. Thank you. Elder Red, you have something on that?
Yeah, as we have just said concerning chapter 9, we're still, I wanted us to also note this about how our actions can result to the things which happen later. You see, when we look at the same Genesis 9 chapter from 22 to 29, we find there something happening, that Ham does something and he calls the brothers, but when Noah now comes to his senses, the punishment which is given in form of a curse, it doesn't fall on him exactly, but it falls on those who are about him, his son, Canaan. So we should also be watching as we continue this discussion, that our actions.
And I of course I remember we said that we should really be careful, because the curse does not really affect me only, but it can also translate to those who are after me. You know, he talks about it in Exodus chapter 20, and he says that unto the third and fourth generation. So our actions really matter. Whatever we do, we should be careful. Pastor,
I got something anyway. Maybe we are dwelling on chapter 9, but I will add two things.
Yes.
One is there is somebody who writes here about the same in the book of Patriarchs and Prophets, chapter 9, paragraph 4. As a rule, children inherit the dispositions and tendencies of their parents and imitate their example, so that sins of the parents are practiced by the children from generation to generation. I'm trying to say, yes, I know we talk about curses, but what happens is, what you do is what your child becomes. And so it goes on and on and on.
Because they learn by imitation.
Yes, they learn by imitation from their parents. Secondly, I wanted to talk about meaning. And it will give us a context of what is happening in chapter 10. It's a very useful text for us to understand. Sometimes we read the genealogy and then we just think, what is the message here? The message is too great. The meaning of the firstborn, Japheth, is may he expand. May he expand. It's like, when you read in some other books, it calls Noah a prophet. It is because of, it's like he was able to prophesy the world by naming his children somehow. So when he names Japheth, Japheth became the father of Europe. We all know how Europe expanded into the entire world. It's not mentioned a lot. Of course, we know in terms because of how he mentions isles of A, B, C, D. We know he was the father of the UK and the father of Netherlands. Basically, these towns that are surrounded by the ocean. So his name means may he expand at first. And so we all know, of course, those people who expanded. They even came to Africa to expand here. So you can see it beforehand. The second born, who is Ham, his name means hot, hot-headed, hot, or the father of multitude, Abraham. You see, his name was changed from Abraham to Abraham. You'll be father of nation. So Ham means he is the father of nations, and indeed the most populous people today are the children of Ham. Even in terms of the listing here, he had children, so many of them.
You're mentioning something there that I know the viewer will be really wanting to understand. You mean, okay, we've not gotten to Abraham yet.
Yes.
I know we'll be meeting him, especially in chapter 12.
Yes.
We start meeting him there. But Ham, there is some link that you've created there. There is Ham, and then Abraham. There is Abram, and then after meeting God, Abraham. So you mean that Abraham was a descendant of Ham?
No, I mean in terms of meaning.
Meaning?
Yes, we'll find, of course, later in the meaning of Shem.
Yes.
And we'll see the family lineage of Shem. But Abraham, his meaning, the name of his meaning, God told him, now you'll no longer be Abraham, you will be Abraham, meaning the father of nations. I'm trying to draw the same meaning. The name Ham means multitude, many, father of multitude, or many. We of course know other characteristics that followed him up. Shem, Shem is a Hebrew name for the word name. Like, what is your name? We'll ask you, what is your Shem? Maybe somehow to make it easier for somebody to understand. So, Shem is a name, that is somebody whose name is just a name. When you talk about a name, he's so renowned. Well, of course, we see the word Shem in Semitic. The Semites derive their name from Shem. Of course, once we continue to discuss, we'll be able to see who is the father of who. But I'm saying, in terms of their names, we will be able to know, in terms of meaning of their names, we will be able to know who and who was where and how, and all these things happen. It's very important. Whenever we are reading the Old Testament, always remember the name has a meaning, and it's a very intentional meaning. It is not just a random meaning. That is the key to understanding, especially the Old Testament.
Wow. So there is a very important thing to do with a name. A name has a meaning.
Yes.
A name can even dictate a person's character. I hear that quite often in our society. And now we have from verse 2 to verse, that is to... Yeah, we have a genealogy now being given from verse 2, and we are being told the sons of Japheth. That is in verse 2 up to verse 5. I don't know what we get from the genealogy of Japheth at this particular instance. Yes, Ed.
Yeah, thank you. Just to add on what Pastor has shared with us about Japheth, that he has given us, that Japheth means, may he expand. If you look at his sons, Gomer, the son of him known as Gomer. Now, if you go back to history and study about the Germans, the English people, and the islands people, you will realize that they came from this son of Japheth known as Gomer. And now, there's another one known as Madai. You remember, maybe to bring a word, maybe a word that can give us a clear understanding on this. We know of the Medes. The Medes they conquered the world at some point, and they were the great, the Medo-Persia, So the Medes, they came from the Madai, who is the son of Japheth. And we also have, we know of the Greeks, we know the Greeks. The Greeks at some point, we had the Grecian Empire, of which Alexander the Great being the first king. So the Greek, they came from this son known as Javan. So if you study around, and if you also look at the Spanish people, they also came from another son of Japheth known as Tiras. So like it was telling us that the nations of Europe, it is actually their great grandfather is this son known as Japheth.
What an interesting way in history to
we are able to know another way. We are able to know they're from Europe from how he describes. He describes that from this, the coastlands people of the Gentiles were separated into their lands, everyone according to his language, according to their families, into their nations. Coast. Now remember, coast. Coast means next to the what? To the sea, to the ocean. So the countries that are around the ocean is what you'll be able to call the children of Japheth. Of course, by now we know most of the nations that are where this civilization is happening are in the middle. Most of these countries in Europe are landlocked, but those that were around. So I was reading somewhere they were saying mostly it's the Isle of Britain, and on top of it there is the Netherlands and something like that. That region that carves itself out the British people, I mean the Europeans mostly, this is their domain. These are the ones. Of course, we also know from in terms of the blessings that Noah was giving, we can be able to relate somehow in the current world today how it's going, who we are referring to. But you can see Moses is not dwelling on them a lot.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It's very important. That point is very important. Moses is not dwelling on them a lot. Where he's dealing with Ham, and I mean he's dealing with Ham and Shem. Why? They are the ones who are going to redefine religion. They define religion in terms of, even as we speak today, religion mostly is concentrated on the children of Ham and Japheth and Shem. Japheth, the religion is not so much concentrated. That's why he just mentioned. We don't talk about religion in Europe a lot. So I'm saying you are able to see from the verse itself and why Moses was not really interested in them, because there was nothing so much important. It's not that it's not important. It's important, salvation, but in terms of salvation, in terms of religion, in terms of world history, or world history of religions. Let me say world history of religions. Mostly we are discussing about Ham and Shem.
And now from verse 6, again we have the sons of Ham. Ham, do we have any? We have a lot actually on Ham, because they the troubled generation, the troubled lineage. Yes.
Perhaps there's something that really struck me here in verse 5 of chapter 10. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families in their nation. It's true. Historically, they don't really have, a religious, grounding. But then we find there's actually a prophecy here talking about the end time. Now, if you would be kind enough to turn to Isaiah chapter 42, verse 4.
Isaiah 42
verse 4, and I'm reading from the King James Version. You can follow in your version. He shall not fail nor be discouraged till he have set judgment in the earth, and the isles shall wait for his law. Now, at that time, they were not religiously founded in Christ. But then we find that there will be a time when they'll actually be what? Waiting for God's law. Now, it is true that the isles refer to, the countries that are just next to the water body. And the Bible really, in verity, confirms that in Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 22. And all the kings of Tyrus, and all the kings of Zidon, and the kings of the isles, which are beyond the sea. So it is true, really. I agree with the pastor. The Bible agrees with the pastor. Now, who then are these who will be awaiting the law at the end time? It refers actually to the Gentiles, who will be part of, who will be part of the proselytes that shall have been changed from a non-religious group, or rather background, thank you, to a group that is really waiting for God's law.
Wow. Thank you. And maybe as we go on a short break, Reru, what do you see in Ham's lineage?
In Ham's lineage. Now when it comes to verse 6, that is, I can see here a mention of at least the people who, the Africans, they are mentioned Cushites.
There's Cush.
There's Cush, and we have a mention of Sheba. And I know Kenyans will identify with verse 7 where we find the name Dedan. Dedan is quite a famous name in Kenya, but we have the Cushites and the mention of Sheba. When you go later into the Bible, when you find King Solomon, there's a mention of the Queen of Sheba, who was actually coming from our neighboring country here, Ethiopia.
Right, in Ethiopia.
So in Ham's genealogy, or in the generations which come from this son of Noah called Ham, we have the Africans found inside it.
Well, just to add something about the genealogy of the sons of Ham. So verse 6 says that the sons of Ham, Cush, we know the Cushites, who we can later identify to be the Ethiopians, And we have the Egyptians, of course, we know the Egyptians, and if you if you study more in prophecy, you will get to understand the Egyptians. Actually, from Egypt it comes the originator of paganism. And we also have the Put. So the Put, they are actually the Liberia, the current name, Liberia. And we have the Canaan. Now, it is only Canaan, who is the son of Ham, who actually was not located in Africa, but he extended his territory to Asia, the sons of Shem, whereby we will later come to identify that the Israelites later, that was actually their land. The Israelites came later and they pushed them off. Yeah.
Wow. And of course in verse 8 and 9, quite interesting, even 10, it says that, and Cush begat Nimrod, he began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And verse 10, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calne in the land of Shinar. This Nimrod, we've always heard him being mentioned. He has always been preached about, especially when you talk about prophecy. We always want to bring in this particular Nimrod, and it's here that we have paganism really coming in, and the other issues. I guess there is much to talk about him on this particular instance, but I think we can just take a short break and then we'll be back to continue that discussion. And of course we'll be talking much about Genesis chapter 10. And remember, we are resuming with Nimrod from verse 8. Don't go away. Welcome back, our dear viewer. Remember, the show is The Bible Journey, and of course your comment and your questions are really valuable in this show. On our social media platform, that is how you can get to engage in this program. That is on Facebook. Find our Facebook page, Hope Channel Kenya, like it, and give us your comment, ask your question. On Twitter handle, our Twitter handle is @Hope_Kenya. And we are back to continue with the discussion of Genesis chapter 10. And my fellow panelists, we ended at the point of Genesis chapter 10, verse 8 to 11, to 10. And here we meet one character who has been very specific, especially when you go to Bible prophecies. The name Nimrod, you'll never miss it there, because later you get people like his wife being mentioned, like Semiramis. That is historically. And his son, the origin of sun worship, Tammuz. Yeah, Tammuz. So there is a whole thing to be discussed here about Nimrod, the mighty hunter. Elder Rero, if I may just bring you in right away.
Okay. Yeah, Pastor, at the beginning of this show, told us about meaning, and yeah, it's good when we look at the verses and we look also at the meaning. The meaning of the name Nimrod itself is hunter, and he's not just any hunter who is mentioned in the Bible. No, when the Bible is written, it has no specific order, but it has relevance with the order in which it was written. So now, concerning...
And actually it mentions the mighty hunter.
The mighty hunter. Yeah. Before, yeah. So the mighty hunter, you want to know about this mighty hunter, and I will invite my fellow panelists to...
Yeah, and if I may bring in Harry on that one. He built a city, a tower, and called it Babel.
Thank you. Now, his might in hunting is from his name, and verily, allow me to just read, because I believe to put perhaps a verse in context, we would require to perhaps even go to the whole Bible.
Yeah, sure.
So Micah chapter 5.
The book of Micah
chapter 5 verse 6. And they shall waste the land of Assyria with a sword, and the land of Nimrod in the entrances thereof. Thus shall he deliver us from the Assyrian, when he cometh into our land, and when he treadeth within our borders. Now we find that Nimrod is counted, or really qualified, as a mighty hunter before the Lord. And he is also part of the group, or the leading group, that ensures that Babel is put into place. We were having a chat with a pastor, and he brought a very important point, that at that time, and it is true, the Bible agrees that there was theocracy. But then when we find that Nimrod comes in, he wants to ensure that he is now the very top, the very supreme being. And I like what he said.
He changes the focus.
Exactly. From God to him.
To him.
That Babel needed to get to heaven. The construction really was supposed to go all the way up to heaven. So we find that in his might, there is no God. The focus is from God, or rather he would like it to be from God to himself. And he loads it over his neighbors, neighboring countries, that it is me. No one else but me.
So here is actually the origin of paganism, idol worship, the focus shifting from God the creator, theocracy, to worship of many idols, syncretism.
Actually, it's true. Remember, but it all began very nicely. The problem, it began all nicely. The mighty hunter before the Lord. Let me say with our current evangelical churches, do I call them evangelical? No. Let me call them these mushrooming churches we have, where somebody begins genuinely, preaching the word of God. Labda anaanza bus station, ama anaanza kwa barabara. Somebody with a message, really. Like Nimrod, he was hunting before the Lord. Of course, not for the Lord. It's before the Lord. That even before God, he was somebody who was a skillful hunter, somebody who was a good organizer, somebody who was a good leader. But it got into his mind. And he thought, let me establish kingdoms. And so he begins to establish kingdoms. Of course, these were small cities by then. We cannot compare by then now. But I want you to imagine, in these days, somebody was able to establish a kingdom. Somebody was able to build Gorofa. Let me use Kiswahili so that it resonates. Somebody is able to build storied houses in those days, whereas even today we are unable to kuweka Gorofa mbili pamoja. They collapse here. But somebody was so skillful. So somebody was so blessed by God. He was so good, and like my friend here is saying, it came into his mind and his thought, kwani huyo Mungu ni nani, by the way? We can survive on our own. Let's build and protect ourselves. Those cities by then were meant for protection. They were not meant for anything really. You go farm out and then come back in. So now he's building, and then when he builds a town, the people are so into themselves. They think, now, what else have we not achieved? We can build, we can stay. Let's just go to heaven, basically. That will be easier. So that in case God just tries to bring another flood, it will not get to us. We'll be in heaven. So that's what God does. Of course, as I say, chapter 11 should be in just before chapter 10 to help us understand this concept. So Nimrod is one of those people who we can say he is there today, where people begin with the right intentions but end up with the wrong results. We really want to pray,
you remind me of Genesis chapter 4, and especially from verse 4. It says that, okay, let me begin from verse 3. And in process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And verse 4, and Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering, but unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was, of course, very wroth with that action. So Nimrod is turning it from the point of focusing on God He focuses the religion on himself, selfishness. And the same way, the first one, Cain, the son of our first father, Adam and Eve, also shifted the focus. And maybe he had quite a good intention. Yeah, this is what is my produce. This is what I farm in the fields. And therefore I have to give unto God what he has blessed me with. But there was a rule that you shall offer such and such a thing, an animal. So there is, like you're saying, we start with a good intention even nowadays and end up doing it the wrong way because God did not direct us in that particular way. Yes. I don't know if now we go to from verse 15 or 15. And Canaan begot Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girgashite. And I guess when you come to when the children of Israel are almost coming into the land of Canaan, I think we have all these groups, or do I call them tribes, or
nations.
Yeah, and nations being mentioned: the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites. All these are being mentioned, and Sidon is quite a place that we have had in the Bible. Now that is in the lineage of Canaan, and Canaan comes in to be very instrumental. When you talk about Ham, actually you shift the focus from Ham, and you concentrate more on Canaan, his son. So I don't know, do we have anything that we are seeing here coming out of Canaan?
Yes. Yeah, maybe to say something. Remember, just the way we have mentioned before, that in verses 25 of chapter 9, that the curse was pronounced upon Canaan, the son of Ham. And we remember from history that, from the Bible, that actually Canaan was a promised land to the children of God, the chosen generation, who are the Israelites. And the Israelites, they had to overcome the Canaanites in order to do what? In order to dwell on this on this land. So biblically, what is coming out, it is maybe God is being more specific. He's introducing us to the genealogy of Ham, but the main focus here is on Nimrod and Canaan. Why? Because they play a very important role in the region, in the religion.
Yeah. And I think it's very crucial to mention verse 19. I think we'll keep on meeting this as we go on. That, and the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon, as thou comest to Gerar, unto Gaza, as thou goest unto Sodom and Gomorrah and Adumah and Zeboim, even unto Lasha. I think when you mention of Sodom and Gomorrah, we are bound to meet that as we continue with the discussion, and it really comes close to us, as Pastor is saying. So as we move forward to Shem,
before you move to Shem,
okay.
It's also good to, this is a genealogy. Genealogy does not consist of cities. We know that. A genealogy should ideally consist of people. Father beget this, begot this, begot this. But as I'm saying, I'll still say it again, we have to put in mind what Moses is doing. He's putting people into their places, so that the Israelites that he's writing to will be able to understand that wale wanawasumbua, these are the people who live here and here. You remember? So they're just basically passing through. You know, it will be rude for you just to, you're talking of a conversation, then, you know, like those people who go to the US, and then you see here in Minnesota, like everybody has ever been to Minnesota. You know, how people just randomly throw in words to show you are learned, to show you've gone to places. But to me, it does not relate to me. Moses is trying to be deliberate into that, so that it can relate to. So when chapter 10 he talks about Nimrod and Babel, you understand. Chapter 12 he talks about Abraham, you'll be able to understand. Chapter 14, 15, by the time he gets to Sodom and Gomorrah, he already told you about who they are and the people who live there, so that you'll not be able to ask, where did these people come from? The Bible explains, that is the beauty of the Bible. It explains itself.
Wow.
And it has all the origins that you learn. So you cannot just pick a text and then randomly start scaring us with text. Because if you are able, including the book of Psalms, talks about the sons of Ham, which is Egypt. By the way, I should have mentioned it. Psalms 105 verse 20, 23, 27, 106, 21 and 22 is how we are able to interpret. We don't even need to read Wikipedia. We can. The Bible itself says that the land of Ham is where the children of Israel were in bondage. So we are able to know where they were in bondage in Egypt, because it's also mentioned again. You see, so the Bible, I wanted to say in terms of reading the Bible, don't be content with just one verse, one message.
It has to be
get the earliest way. Understand, because that was the intention. This Bible was not written to Kenyans.
No.
This Bible was written to the Israelites. Of course, to extension all of us. So you have to understand the mentality of the Israelites, where they are and what they are doing right now, for them to be able to receive this message. That is why we keep on misquoting the Bible so many times.
Wow. Thank you. I think we should take caution on that, and I think Isaiah mentions that it should be verse upon verse, a little here, a little there, everything from one place to another. Genesis, you meet a verse in Revelation explaining something in Genesis. So it's something that you really have to study in and out. And now, because of time, I would request that we go to now the genealogy of Shem. Shem is also mentioned, and quite a number of people here being mentioned. I don't know, what do we get from this, and where are these people, their habitations? You know, in the book of, was it Acts chapter 4 verse around 16, where it says the bounds and their habitations. What verse was that, Pastor, again? I've forgotten it. But who are these the descendants of Shem, and what do we associate them with? If I can bring in Obara. Yeah,
so verses 22, chapter 10, 22 says that the sons of Shem, Elam, Ashur. So maybe to stop there and say something, that the sons of Shem are Elam and Ashur. We remember Ashur are the Assyrian. The Assyrian, the very first kingdom to be in this world, to conquer the whole world, was
around
the
606 BC.
Yeah, was the Assyrian kingdom. Yeah, so they came from the genealogy of the sons of Shem.
Yeah.
And we remember that Shem, they are the current descendants of Shem are the Asians. The Asians people. And just to continue to verses 25, 23, the sons of Haran, Uz.
Yeah, Uz.
Uz. If I talk about Uz, what comes into our mind?
Abraham.
Job.
Oh yeah, Job, not Abraham.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Job he came from this country, from the land of Uz. So what is, and also just go to verse 25. To Eber were born two sons. The name of the one was Peleg, for in the days of the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. If we come later, we realize that Abraham, of whom it is promised that a greater descendant will come out of it, and he will be the father of many nations. They came from this son known as Peleg. So actually from Shem, what is coming out very clearly is that it is a blessed generation. Yeah, it is a blessed generation. Wow. One last thing I would like to mention is that whenever God is starting out something new, He always has a remnant of His people to begin the truth.
Yeah, sure.
We from right away from Genesis chapter 6, we realize that Noah and his sons, it was a new beginning for God to start over after the that is after the flood. After the nations had sinned against God, and now God had to destroy them with flood. And now from Noah's generation, God had to start a new beginning. It was a remnant of his people who had actually kept the truth. But we realize that even after from the 3 sons of Noah, they went against what God desired of them. But still, God had a remnant of his people. And this remnant, they came from the sons of Shem. And from Shem, we also realize that it is not all of them. It is not all of the sons that were born of Shem that kept the truth. There was a remnant. And from Peleg it came out Abraham, of whom it is the father of
all nations. Yeah, and you know, in geography, I mentioned this last time. In geography, in Form 2, I remember doing the course, and I was told the Earth was one large landmass. And I'm getting a verse here that seems to be convincing me that geography was right, that the world was just one large landmass that divided and kept on drifting apart until we have now the continents Africa, Europe, we have North and South America, and all these parts of the world. Because in verse 25 it says that what you read, and unto Eber was born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days, and actually there was a version that says Peleg means divisions, and in division says, for in his days there was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. Now I want to bring in Reru on your understanding on, in his time was the earth divided.
Okay, thank you.
Is
now,
the Bible trying to tell us that sure, the land, the earth was one large landmass, divided, then drifted apart, then that's how you end up being with all these continents?
And other continents. Now, it is good when we read the Bible, we understand when it mentions the word one in the Bible, it normally relates to people rather than the land itself. When it talks about the land, it is actually mentioning even in prophecy about the people, the population. So when we read that before the division, you know, we have been reading the genealogy of the sons of Noah. And these are people who are speaking one language. They were doing everything that was just one. Even in their speech, their character, I believe, they were just singular. But after some time now, when they had become many, like we'll find later when we find these two families, 2 relatives, Abraham and Lot, they became rich, and you know, while you're becoming rich, you also have an influence about you. If the people about you also become many, you acquire people who can help you in your richness. So when your family grows, you need to separate. Somebody needs to move out so that facilities about you can be enough.
Maybe as we get to the tail end of this, I would not want to end the show without having your final thoughts on this particular, especially on Shem and the entire book of okay, you can talk about Shem, and then Pastor to just summarize us on the entire book of this chapter, of chapter 10, Genesis. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, in Genesis chapter 9, we find that Shem was blessed. Now, Ham, his descendants from Egypt. Now, you find that in Genesis chapter 12, Abraham went to Egypt to look for food. At that time, it looked as though Ham was actually, prosperous.
Yeah.
He was actually more blessed, so to speak, at that time. But remember,
because he saved nations, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
But remember, there was a curse that had been pronounced upon him. So, and really, I believe that we have to derive practical lessons from this. Now, it might seem that perhaps the wicked are
prosper.
prospering.
Jeremiah complained a lot in the
He
book of
did.
Lamentations.
He did.
Yeah.
In fact, you know, lamentation is just to lament.
Yeah.
He was
Complaints to
lamenting.
God. Why?
But then we find that the curse still was, you know, made actually perfect in its time. You know, I'm saying perfect not in a sadistic way, really, but because the Bible is sure.
Sure.
Now, the other thing that I would like to say is in chapter 9, the Bible is very sure when it says that, and you, verse 7, be ye fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply therein. Now we find that this was, you know, a commandment given to them. And we find that it was actualized in the form of the dividing of the people, in the form of the descendants occupying the whole earth. Now, if you approach chapter 10 superficially, I must say it might seem very boring because it talks about certain things that, you know, don't really seem to make sense. We don't understand the names.
You'd really want to rush through and...
yes, genealogy. You'd be like, what is, you know, godly about this? What is really practical that you should perhaps derive from that? And I liked what Pastor said, that when we contextualize the chapter, we will be able to understand that it was written for this purpose so that we can take it in our lives and enforce it as a matter of practical godliness.
Wow. Thank you. It has to be practical. Finally, Pastor.
Yes, of course, as we are talking about Shem, verse 21 says very well, and the children were born also to Shem. English, just note the use of the English, were also born, like it wasn't really meant to be, but I am telling you anyway, for you to know. The father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder. Of course, it explains what we were saying, Japheth is the elder one. Now, Eber, Hebrew, the Hebrews. I'm trying to relate to try and tell you what Moses is saying. He's saying, so anyway, even if it is not relevant, one of the children of Shem was Eber. Way down the line, not the immediate child of Shem was not Eber, not the immediate one. Of course, we all come to know about it much later. And facts had got this and that. What is Moses doing, and is what I want to be able to dwell with today. He's trying to do something. Ideally, blessing is to come through the firstborn. Ideally, we have a structure that should be followed. But when God says you're a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, He set you apart. Doesn't matter whether you are from small community or a big one.
Sure.
Whether you are meant to be insignificant or not, when God has chosen you, you are able to see what Moses is doing. He is saying Shem should not even be under discussion. These were born also of Shem. You know, the others were, these were the children of A, B, C, D. But of Shem, you know, he should not even be discussing about Shem. But out of this family of Shem, one of them, Mukondanindani, is called Eber, who is our father, we as a Hebrew people. And he was blessed to be the father of Abraham, who was blessed to be the father of Jesus Christ, who was blessed.
So it is a privilege indeed.
It's so in the end, what we have an idea of God as being a predestinating kind of, you know, like huyu ndiye atawaibarikiwa peke yake. But here is an example of if you're faithful, God can bless you in your own way. Amen. That is what He's trying to do. So it is not about you being the rightful owner of blessings. Esau was the rightful owner, but God just changed it. Let us give it to Jacob. Somebody else was meant to be, and here we have an example of a small nation of the Israelites being so powerful that even today we are not even able to handle them. And the last thing I would say is when God curses you, it follows up. What you were reading was Malachi 3, verse 14, 15, and 16. People were complaining. Those who are supposed to be cursed are the ones who are getting blessed. Those of us who are supposed to be blessed are the ones who are getting curses. But then God says something very important. Wait up to the end and see. Malachi 3, Malachi talks about the book of remembrance. That it's not today. It's up to the end. Remain faithful, even if it doesn't look like you're getting blessed today. Until the end, your blessings are with you.
Wow.
Amen.
Really a blessing, and I really want to appreciate for your coming today, of course, because of time. And that is Pastor Kabira Kabira. Yeah, of course, a brother. And George Reru, all the way from Moi University. We have Sam Obara from UON, and Harry Kiche from JKUSTA. Thank you very much, my guests, for coming on board. And of course, our viewer, we appreciate your presence today. We appreciate your time for being with us from the beginning up to this end. Remember, we are still there. The discussion is still going on our social media platforms. That is on Facebook page, Hope Channel Kenya. Like the page, send your comments, send your question, and my guests here will be able to respond. And then also on Twitter, that is at Hope_Kenya. Use the hashtag The Bible Journey. Remember, The Bible Journey is our hashtag. Thank you very much for being with us as we end with a word of prayer from our brother Kiche.
Let's believe and pray. Our most gracious Father in heaven, it is indeed a privilege when 2 or 3 are gathered to pray and even study your word. How I sincerely ask that it may nourish our souls, may it find good soil to grow, so that with faith we may even produce fruits that are 100-fold. Master, I ask that you bless the hands of those who have been part of this journey, indeed through the Bible. I ask that you enable the word, which indeed will meet its objective, and it shall not come back to you minus doing so. I ask this believing and trusting through Jesus Christ, who is our Lord and Savior.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much. Until next time, see you then, and God bless you. Next time we talk about Genesis chapter 11. Thank you.